Hello and welcome. As you're waking up to your true nature and the nature of reality, it's natural to start questioning the person that you've thought you were for your entire life. You realize that there are a lot of things within you that no longer resonate with you, things that feel inauthentic and artificial, baggage that you've simply taken on as your own without having consciously said yes to it. David R. Hawkins is one of the teachers who have researched the difference between false and true self the most, and made an attempt at putting it into words in a coherent way. You will also see that there is a lot of overlap between the teachings of Hawkins and those of other teachers. What this points to is that there are universal characteristics of our inner realities that most are not aware of, but which are crucial if we want to truly understand ourselves, which, in turn, is crucial in the times we are living in, as the focus for those who are waking up is turned away from the outside and towards our inner lives. The concept of the true self, as described by David R. Hawkins, is one of the most profound inquiries into the nature of existence and consciousness. Hawkins presents the true self not as something to be created, found in the external world, or achieved through effort, but as the eternal, unchanging essence of our being. This is something that we will come back to in different ways throughout this video, as this is a knowledge that needs to be understood on a deeper level than that of the intellect, even though it will be elusive before it has turned into experiential knowledge. This essence exists beyond the mind's constructs, beyond emotional fluctuations, and beyond the illusions perpetuated by the ego. To truly grasp the significance of the true self, one must embark on a journey of self-awareness, surrender, and transformation that dismantles the ego's grip and reveals the pure awareness that is always present. What you will notice is that the more you begin to live and act from infinite consciousness, as opposed to the ego's separate identity, the more your personality will feel natural and authentic. The ego, according to Hawkins, is the false self. It is a product of conditioning, formed by external influences and sustained through identification with transient phenomena. The ego thrives on attachment to material things, roles, accomplishments, and relationships, as well as the narratives we build around our lives. It constructs an identity that feels separate, vulnerable, and incomplete, driving the endless pursuit of validation, control, and fulfillment in external circumstances. The ego operates through fear, pride, and desire, perpetuating illusions of duality and disconnection from others and the world. When looking at how Hawkins describes the ego, it's hard to not see how our societies and cultures, for the most part, are geared towards the ego. You can also see that this, as someone who is waking up, is what you need to transcend. Our cultures, particularly those focused on consumerism, social status, and external validation, provide fertile ground for the ego to flourish. Through the lens of Hawkins's teachings, it becomes clear that societal norms often reinforce the illusions of separateness, inadequacy, and dependency on external outcomes. Hawkins points out that the ego seeks fulfillment through external achievements, possessions, and recognition, yet these pursuits are ultimately unsatisfying. There will always be an insatiable hunger for more when operating from this state. Happiness and fulfillment is always around the corner. Modern society amplifies this tendency by creating systems and values that prioritize competition, individualism, and material success. Social hierarchies, advertising, and political systems appeal to the ego's desire for superiority and validation, perpetuating cycles of fear, desire, and pride. These dynamics are reflective of collective consciousness operating predominantly at lower vibrational levels, as described in Hawkins's map of consciousness. The challenge lies in recognizing how deeply embedded these patterns are and how they influence thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. The opportunity is in using this awareness as a springboard for transcendence. Awakening involves seeing through the illusions perpetuated by societal ego structures and understanding that the fulfillment they promise is an illusion. However, even if you understand this, it's easy to get caught up in these trappings. Even spirituality can become a pursuit of experiences, status, and accomplishment, and those that get caught up in it are seldomly aware of it. Hawkins emphasizes the importance of transcending these egoic influences to align with the higher self. This requires moving away from external dependencies and into a state of inner freedom. Letting go, as he describes, is a key tool in this process. By surrendering attachments to societal expectations, judgments, and the need for approval, you begin to dismantle the ego's hold. This surrender doesn't mean disengaging from society entirely, but rather engaging with it from a place of awareness, compassion, and authenticity. To be in the world, but not of it, as Jesus put it. The process of awakening also highlights the role of courage and integrity in navigating an ego-driven world. Hawkins describes courage as the level where one begins to step out of fear-based thinking and into truth-seeking. It takes courage to resist societal pressures to conform to egoic ideals and to instead pursue a path of authenticity and alignment with the true self. Integrity reinforces this by guiding actions and choices toward higher principles, regardless of external circumstances or cultural norms. Moreover, as one transcends the ego, a shift occurs in how society is perceived. Instead of seeing it as an adversary, you might come to view it as a collective expression of human consciousness at a certain stage of development. This perspective fosters compassion rather than judgment, both for oneself and for others still caught in the ego's grip. As Hawkins suggests, by embodying higher levels of consciousness such as love, acceptance, and peace, you not only transform your own experience, but also contribute positively to the collective. Thus, recognizing the limitations of the ego is the first step in the journey toward realizing the true self. In essence, the suffering created by the ego arises from its resistance to reality, its clinging to the past, and its anxiety about or expectations of the future. These patterns are rooted in lower levels of consciousness, where emotions such as shame, guilt, apathy, and anger dominate. And when you start viewing society through this lens, you will soon start to become aware of how much of human behavior is governed by these emotions. If you're honest with yourself, you will likely find this in you as well. For someone awakening to the truth of their being, transcending the influences that drive you towards these emotional states becomes an essential part of the journey. This requires discernment, surrender, and a commitment to living authentically despite the pressures to conform. Awakening is not about rejecting society, but about transforming your relationship with it, allowing you to interact from a space of awareness and higher consciousness. This is not a passive act of resignation, but an active engagement with the present moment. It means accepting reality as it is, without resistance or the need to control outcomes. Surrendering in this way creates space for the natural state of peace, joy, and freedom to emerge. It is through letting go that the illusions of separateness dissolve and the truth of one's being comes into view. A crucial point in this journey is when you start observing what state you are operating from, which we talked about a moment ago. Ask yourself which emotions truly drive you as you interact with your experiences, and if you are in a reactive, inauthentic, pre-programmed mindset, or if you are truly making conscious choices from a place where you are grounded in the present moment, acting from higher emotions and consciously chosen values. You are also reminded that most of us are not nearly as aware of these things as we think before we start to truly look at ourselves. The true self is the aspect of your being that exists independently of roles, labels, achievements, or external conditions. As stated in the beginning, unlike the ego, which is tied to fleeting and external factors, the true self is constant, unchanging, and deeply connected to the present moment. It is the silent awareness that observes your thoughts, emotions, and experiences without being defined by them. You experience the true self when you feel at peace without any particular reason. It emerges in moments of stillness when you are not trying to be anything or achieve anything, but simply are and allow life to unfold before you. This state is often described as being authentic, natural, and unburdened by the need to impress, defend, or prove something. It is a presence that feels whole and content in itself, regardless of circumstances. When connected to the true self, you respond to situations rather than react to them. For example, instead of feeling defensive when criticized, the true self might observe the criticism, assess its value without taking it personally, and either act on it or let it go without resentment. As you can understand, acting from your true self requires going against ingrained patterns of reacting and behaving. You need to take a step back from whatever is going on and realize that you have a choice in how you respond, and it is only the ego, not you, that is diminished by not responding defensively or hostile to said criticism. But don't be hard on yourself when you inevitably fail with this and slip back into old patterns. This is a natural part of your awakening process and something that everyone goes through. It is inevitable to fall many times along the way. The true self is also characterized by qualities such as love, compassion, creativity, and intuition. These are not forced behaviors, but natural expressions that arise when you are aligned with your deeper being. For example, acts of kindness performed without expectation of reward stem from the true self. Similarly, moments of creative inspiration, where ideas flow effortlessly, are reflections of the true self's connection to the infinite. A practical way to recognize the true self is by observing the difference between moments of tension and ease. The ego thrives on tension, worrying about the future, regretting the past, or striving for external outcomes. The true self, as you probably understand by now, resides in the present moment, free from these mental entanglements. When you let go of needing things to be a certain way, you align with your true self and experience a profound sense of peace and freedom. The true self does not cling to labels such as good or bad. It does not derive identity from being a parent, professional, artist, or any other role. Instead, it recognizes that these are parts of life's play, not the essence of who you are. For instance, while the ego might cling to being seen as successful or accomplished, the true self sees success as an experience, but not as a definition of its value. Practically speaking, you can nurture your connection to the true self through practices that encourage mindfulness and surrender. Meditation, for example, allows you to step back from the chatter of the mind and rest in the stillness of your true nature. Self-inquiry, such as asking, "Who am I beyond these thoughts and roles?" helps reveal the presence of the observer, the true self, behind all experiences. When challenges arise, the ego often seeks control or blames others, but the true self approaches difficulties with acceptance and clarity. It understands that external events are temporary and that peace comes from within, not from changing circumstances. For instance, if a plan falls apart, the ego might react with frustration and self-pity, while the true self might calmly assess the situation and adapt without losing its sense of equilibrium. Living from the true self does not mean avoiding challenges or emotions, but experiencing them without losing connection to your deeper nature. Fear, anger, and sadness may still arise, but they are observed as passing states rather than defining traits. The true self does not resist these experiences, but allows them to come and go. Knowing this, you can know when you're coming from the true self and when you are coming from the ego. The true self always has a higher perspective, where it knows that everything in the long run fundamentally is okay, even if there are difficult or chaotic things present in one's current experience of reality, and, paradoxically, that the now is all there is. And in the now, there are usually no immediate problems until one starts feeding them by thinking about them. In relationships, the true self fosters genuine connections because it is not preoccupied with ego-driven concerns like approval, dominance, or validation. It listens attentively, communicates honestly, and expresses empathy naturally. For example, a conversation guided by the true self is open and present, free from hidden agendas or the need to impress. Hawkins offers a framework for understanding human consciousness through his scale of consciousness, which outlines a spectrum of awareness. This spectrum ranges from the lowest states of consciousness, characterized by suffering and negativity, to the highest states of enlightenment and unconditional love. As one ascends this scale, the qualities of the true self become increasingly apparent. In the lower states, the ego's dominance obscures the true self, but in the higher states, qualities such as compassion, serenity, and unity shine through. These higher states reflect the natural condition of the true self, free from the distortions of the ego. Understanding this scale shows how different emotions drive different types of thoughts and behavior, which in turn helps with the de-identification process, as this mere understanding places a distance between us and all of the ever-changing activity within. If the emotional states are involuntary and they drive how we think and behave, it follows logically that none of it can be us. It's just fleeting processes. Knowing this, we can start making conscious choices that will help us gain more power over our inner states. We realize that it's our relationship with ourselves, our attitudes, and the choices we make, rather than the outcomes in the external reality, that determine how we feel. In the state of self-realization, the distinction between the personal self and the universal self dissolves. This realization is not an intellectual understanding, but an experiential knowing of one's existence as inseparable from all of life. Hawkins describes this as beingness, a state of pure awareness that is beyond thought, form, and time. It is the recognition that one's true nature is not limited by the body or mind, but is infinite and eternal. This alignment requires a dedication to inner work and the pursuit of higher truths. These are truths that are aligned with who we truly are, such as pure, unconditional love, peace, and, ultimately, non-duality. The ultimate realization of the true self is what Hawkins refers to as enlightenment. In this state, the illusions of duality disappear, and one experiences a profound sense of unity with all existence. Enlightenment is not an altered state of consciousness, but the natural state of being when the ego is no longer in control. It is marked by a deep and abiding peace, a joy that is not dependent on circumstances, and a love that is unconditional and boundless. This state represents the full realization of the true self as the essence of life itself. Hawkins's teachings emphasize that the journey to the true self is not about acquiring something new, but about uncovering what has always been present. As already mentioned, but which bears repeating, and which is something that you will find echoed in many spiritual teachings, the true self is found through the letting go of everything that is not part of it. Ultimately, at its core, the true self transcends all boundaries of a limited personal self and is instead one with God or infinite consciousness and with every other being in the universe. Thus, the true self is not a distant goal, but the very foundation of one's existence. It is the timeless awareness that has witnessed every moment of life, untouched by the changes and challenges of the external world. In conclusion, the teachings of David R. Hawkins invite us to embark on a journey of surrender, self-awareness, and transformation to uncover the true self. This journey is not about adding to who we are, but about letting go of the layers of illusion that obscure our essence. The true self is infinite, unchanging, and intimately connected with all of existence. By surrendering attachments, embracing higher states of consciousness, and living in alignment with truth, we awaken to this deeper reality. In doing so, we find a peace and joy that transcends the temporary and realize that the true self is not something to be found, but something to be remembered, as it has always been within us. this realization offers a life of freedom, unity, and fulfillment that is the birthright of every being. If this seems abstract to you at this moment, don't worry. You will sooner or later start to experience this for yourself as you are going through your spiritual awakening, which you are if you gravitate towards content like this. For some, there is an instant shift, but for most it starts as glimpses of being part of the infinite consciousness of God. These can be anything from a calm knowing that you are not your body or brain, and a feeling that what is you is no longer fixed to your physical body, to ecstatic experiences of pure love where all boundaries are dissolved. What is interesting to observe in this is that as you lose your sense of being a separate individual, it doesn't feel like losing anything. Instead, it feels like letting go of something that was never there to begin with, in favor of what has always been. It is not about forgetting all the experiences of that which you've perceived as you, or about completely losing yourself in some state of abstract, pure awareness. Everything, in a sense, continues as before. Yet, everything has changed, and, as stated in the beginning, you can more and more naturally embrace your uniqueness when you no longer attach any importance to upholding a particular identity. You've now reached the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for your time.